Welcome back from lunch, everyone. I want you to get excited because this is the day you've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
So I know we've shown you the product, the product, and you love it. And we've shown you our implementation accelerator business processes. And you kind of had some feedback, and you said, guys, you know, this warehouse software, it looks great, but we're not going to use it, and we're going to use our own warehouse software, so why are we doing this? And then you also said things like item information. You've shown us all these pages and all these fields of what you do, but we're just going to feed it in from our single product master and dump it in. Like, I don't think anybody's ever going to use these pages. And what did we say? We said, patience, grasshopper. It will all come together, right? Well, now is when it's going to come together, okay? So Avery, you're going to see how we're going to integrate with your warehouse, and it'll all be good. And Roger, you're going to see how we're going to get the item data in. This is where it's all going to start. So are you excited?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Go team.
This is the agenda, and I'll give you a second to look at it. Okay, so we're going to have two major parts. The first part is we're going to just cover the nuts and bolts. So, you know, if you're a journalist, you write the newspaper article, and the first paragraph is who, what, when, where, why. Very straightforward. It's just going to give you the base information. I'm going to tell you what business process flows are. I'm going to tell you where they are going to be stored, how we're going to track them. I'll show you a sample, and just a little bit of basics about how we do that. Then what I'm going to do is go into depth of a flow and just show you how that works. So at the end of this, you'll know all those logistics, and I'll also give you this deck so you'll have that in the future. Now, much, much more interesting is this tips and tricks. So Jeff and I have worked with the brands team, and we've worked on some of these business process flows and actually have developed some of these for you, or for Sears, and we have those to show you. And we've also thought about kind of the art of it. So there's the science of it, what do you have to fill out, and what are the rules. And then there's the kind of, well, how do I get it done? And this is going to be a fairly big project. It's probably going to take us about 3 months. So we're going to tell you some things that we've learned about how to approach getting this done, how to work with your team and the Infor team and actually get this done. Now, we have a very, very limited amount of time today, and we really want to make sure that you're going to have the chance to learn and digest and talk with Jeff and stuff, so we probably will not finish the tips and tricks today. But what I'm going to do is at the end of this, I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to tell you some things to think about in regards to how to move forward, and then we're going to have another session where we'll go through this in depth. And so the advantage of doing this in 2 parts is going to be, you're going to have some time to think and digest, come up with your questions, and then the second part, which will be much more interactive, you'll have some preparation done. So what is a business process flow? So a business process flow is going to document what you need to do from the perspective of the user. And you've seen a lot of these. All these implementation accelerators, we've walked through step by step. This is what happens, first step, second step, third step. So for example, we've done customer order to fulfillment and things that are very generic like that. So what I've put down here is some specific flows that you have. So for example, the first one is a vendor purchase order delivered to your fulfillment center. Okay, that's going to be different for you because into your distribution center. Your distribution center is going to be your warehouse software. So we're going to have to look at how the information in your warehouse software gets into M3. So that's going to be custom to your project, and you're going to have to write a flow and some information for how that will happen. Later in the project, we'll then look into detail about the specific messages and the communication between the two. So the business process flows have 2 parts. The first part I've shown on the screen here. So if you look here, these are swim lanes. So swim lanes are either a person, an actor working with the system. It's either a system itself. So this middle swim lane here is M3. Or it's these two things here, which is the integration layer, and this will tell us how the integration works. This flow is complemented by a Word document, and you'll see if you have a box here, we'll put some more information in the Word document. So that's the gist of what a business process flow, or what we will call an ANA 30 will look like. So where do you find it? Everything you need for design is in the design folder. And what I've done is I put samples in a template in the design folder for you to start with. We'll be tracking this in what's called the TAR 35B. We actually track all our custom work and our work in that. That is in the top level of the design folder. Right here, TAR 35B, business process, interface messages, and approval inventory. So I won't go through in detail all the columns here, but we'll have things for each business flow, like the ID, its name, who's in charge of it. And then one important column is its stage. This is how we're going to be tracking the work, and as if it's complete, if we've tested it, if we've used it in a CRP. And this is our monitoring progress. And I'll let you just look at the individual stages. Now, as I said, we're going to come to the more interesting part, is the tips and tricks based on the real knowledge. And let me just give you a second to look at kind of a step-by-step process that Jeff's team has worked out. So if you begin to think about how to approach the business process flows, what you'll need to do is come up with a list. So how do you come up with this list? What our recommendation is you brainstorm. Okay, so what the brands group did was come up with a list. They looked at it as, how are we going to get, what are the various pathways to get our products to our customers? The main customer obviously is Amazon.com, and there's various ways they did that. It could go through the Dart warehouses, it could be delivered directly via the vendor, and various other options. So they looked at this list and they said, what's the best way to slice and dice this? One possible approach is you put everything in one big massive diagram, and then it's all there. But you can imagine that it might be kind of complex. You would have like a lot of, if this, go here, if that, go there. It's just a lot to digest. Another way is you could get very, very granular, right? And then the disadvantage there is you have a lot of documents to manage. A lot of times there might be repeated steps, so you're either referencing other documents or cut and pasting code, and that might get overwhelming too. So you gotta find like a happy medium of how do you have the right number of flows, right, that we can manage, but each one being easy to work with. So what you're going to do in preparation for the next part of this is you're gonna think about what your processes are, what is different from what you are doing and you need to do in the future than what you've seen in our M3 software. Assume that any other system that has to interact in that business process will need to be on this list, as well as anything else that you, from your Moscow list that you know we have not shown you, will have to be that. So that's your homework. To come up with that list, and we will begin the workshop at that point and walk you through this process.
Awesome.
Thank you.